30 holiday dishes sat on your grandmother's table in 1980: tomato aspic ring, crown roast of pork, and jellied cranberry salad.
Back then, child, our holidays smelled like cinnamon and love. We didn't buy joy, we baked it.
Each fed 12 guests for under $15 to make and tasted better than any bakery. Today, you won't find a single one at your holiday's dinner. These dishes vanished when we traded homemade celebrations for convenience. We're bringing them back. Let's start with first one. The shimmering red gelatin mold dominated holiday tables throughout the 1980s, filled with tomato juice, gelatin, and vegetables, then unmolded to reveal a perfect ring shape. This dish represented sophistication and effort, signaling to guests that the hostess had invested time in creating something special. The preparation required planning. The mold needed hours to set properly, but the ingredients cost less than $1. Tomato juice, unflavored gelatin, celery, and basic seasonings combined to create a savory side dish that looked far more impressive than its humble components suggested. The center of the ring was typically filled with chicken salad, egg salad, or cottage cheese, creating a complete course that served 8 people. The aspic appeared at Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter dinners, becoming so ubiquitous that its absence would have seemed strange to holiday guests. This spectacular centerpiece involved tying pork rib chops in a circle to create a crown shape, with the bones forming elegant points that could be decorated with paper frills. The butcher prepared the roast specially, and the dramatic presentation made it perfect for Christmas and New Year's dinners. The center cavity was filled with stuffing, bread cubes, sausage, apples, and herbs that absorbed the pork drippings and became incredibly flavorful. A crown roast cost about $5 and fed 10 people generously, making it economical despite its impressive appearance. The preparation required attention to timing and temperature, but Betty Crocker's instructions made it accessible to home cooks. Carving at the table became a ceremonial moment, with the father slicing between the ribs while family members watched in anticipation. The combination of tender pork, savory stuffing, and crispy exterior created textures and flavors that made holidays feel truly special. This molded salad combined cranberry sauce, orange juice, celery, and walnuts suspended in gelatin, creating a sweet tart side dish that appeared at virtually every Thanksgiving table. The recipe used canned cranberry sauce, making preparation simple and reliable. The mold was prepared the day before, allowing the flavors to meld and ensuring the gelatin set properly. When unmolded onto a lettuce-lined platter, it created an impressive presentation that suggested hours of work, despite requiring only 20 minutes of active preparation. The cost was minimal, about 75 cents for ingredients that served 12 people. The combination of fruit, nuts, and vegetables made it feel nutritious, though the sugar content was substantial. Children enjoyed the familiar cranberry flavor and the novelty of eating something that wobbled. Adults appreciated the refreshing quality that cut through rich holiday meats. The salad appeared so regularly that many families considered it mandatory for proper Thanksgiving celebrations. Whole hams dominated Easter and Christmas tables, studded with cloves and covered with a glaze made from brown sugar, mustard, and pineapple juice. The preparation was straightforward but time-consuming, the ham baked for hours, with the glaze applied during the final 30 minutes to create a caramelized, sticky coating. Pineapple rings and maraschino cherries were pinned to the ham's surface with toothpicks, creating a festive appearance that delighted children. A whole ham cost about $6 and provided enough meat for dinner plus sandwiches for days afterward, making it economical for extended family gatherings. The sweet-savory combination appealed to American palates that embraced sugar in unexpected places. Carving the ham became a masculine ritual, with fathers sharpening knives and slicing thin pieces while family members assembled around the table. Leftovers were transformed into ham salad, ham and beans, and split pea soup, ensuring nothing went to waste. This luxurious stuffing elevated holiday turkeys beyond ordinary meals, combining bread cubes with fresh oysters, butter, celery, and herbs. Coastal families considered it essential for proper Christmas and Thanksgiving dinners, while inland families viewed it as exotic and special. Fresh oysters cost about $2 per pint, making this one of the more expensive holiday dishes, but the flavor justified the expense. The oysters added brininess and richness that transformed simple bread stuffing into something memorable. The preparation required careful attention. The oysters needed gentle cooking to prevent toughness, but Betty Crocker's instructions made it manageable for home cooks. Some families stuffed the turkey with this mixture, while others baked it separately in a casserole dish. Children often avoided the oysters themselves, but enjoyed the flavored bread around them. Adults savored the complex flavors that signaled this was a special occasion worth celebrating properly. What's next gets richer. The centerpieces that cost less than your coffee today, the recipe that made guests beg for recipes, the main courses your grandmother served like royalty on a factory worker's budget. Recipe 11 was at every 1980s dinner table, and it fed 8 people for the price of one modern latte. This stunning layered creation featured 3 colors of gelatin, typically red, white, and green for Christmas, each layer set separately before the next was added. The process took hours because each layer needed to firm completely before the next could be poured, but the result was spectacular. When sliced, the salad revealed perfect stripes that impressed guests and demonstrated the hostess's patience and skill. The recipe used flavored gelatin packages, cream cheese for the white layer, and sometimes fruit cocktail or crushed pineapple for texture. The entire salad cost about $1 and served 12 people, making it economical despite the impressive presentation. Children loved the sweet flavors and the novelty of striped gelatin. European traditions influenced this elegant stuffing that combined roasted chestnuts with bread cubes, butter, herbs, and sometimes sausage. The preparation was labor-intensive. Chestnuts needed roasting, peeling, and chopping, but the result was sophisticated and delicious. Fresh chestnuts cost about $1 per pound during holiday season, and 2 pounds provided enough for stuffing a large turkey. The slightly sweet, nutty flavor distinguished this stuffing from ordinary versions, making it special enough for important holiday gatherings. Families with European heritage considered it essential for maintaining cultural connections and traditions. The stuffing worked equally well inside the turkey or baked separately in a casserole dish. Tiny pearl onions were peeled, boiled until tender, and served in a rich white sauce made from butter, flour, milk, and cream. This side dish appeared at Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners throughout the 1980s, representing traditional American holiday cooking. The preparation was tedious. Peeling dozens of small onions tested patience, but the result was creamy, mild, and comforting. A bag of pearl onions cost about 40 cents, and combined with basic ingredients for the sauce, the dish cost less than $1 for 12 servings. The white sauce could be enhanced with nutmeg or white pepper for subtle complexity. Some families added frozen peas to create a combination dish that provided color contrast. Children often resisted the onions, but adults appreciated the mild, sweet flavor that developed during cooking. Sweet potatoes were sliced, layered in a casserole dish with butter, brown sugar, and marshmallows, then baked until the marshmallows turned golden and the potatoes became tender and sweet. This dish dominated Thanksgiving tables, representing American holiday cooking at its most characteristic. The preparation was simple but required timing. The marshmallows needed just enough heat to brown without burning. Sweet potatoes cost about 30 cents per pound, and combined with sugar and marshmallows, the entire dish cost about $1 for 10 servings. The sweetness divided families. Children universally loved it, while some adults found it too sugary. The combination of soft sweet potatoes and crispy marshmallow topping created textural contrast that made each bite interesting. This elegant salad combined diced apples, celery, walnuts, and raisins with a mayonnaise dressing served on lettuce leaves for holiday luncheons and dinners. The preparation was straightforward but required attention to detail. Apples needed lemon juice to prevent browning, and ingredients needed uniform dicing for proper presentation. The salad cost about $1 for ingredients that served 8 people, making it economical for holiday gatherings. The combination of sweet apples, crunchy celery and walnuts, and creamy dressing appealed to varied palates. The salad appeared at Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter meals, often served as a first course or alongside the main meal. Some families added grapes or mandarin oranges for variety. The dish represented sophistication and careful preparation, signaling that the hostess valued her guests enough to create something special. Children enjoyed the mild flavors and the fun of eating something that felt like dessert but was called salad. Rehook. 10 recipes. The next batch includes the dishes that defined holidays' dinner, the molded salads that shimmered under dining room lights, the roasts that made the house smell like celebration, the sides that turned vegetables into art. Recipe 16 cost 67 cents in 1980s and looks more elegant than anything you'll find at a $50 per plate restaurant today. European immigrant families maintained traditions by serving roast goose for Christmas dinner stuffed with apples, onions, and bread cubes that absorbed the rich goose fat. The preparation required skill. Goose was fattier than turkey and needed careful attention to prevent greasiness. A whole goose cost about $7, making it one of the more expensive holiday options, but the flavor justified the expense for families who valued tradition. The dark, rich meat tasted completely different from turkey, creating a sense of special occasion and cultural connection. The apple stuffing balanced the richness with fruity sweetness and absorbed excess fat during cooking. Carving required expertise because goose had different anatomy than turkey. The rendered goose fat was saved for cooking throughout the winter, adding value beyond the single meal. Children often found the flavor too intense, but adults who had grown up with goose considered it essential for proper Christmas celebrations. This southern tradition combined fresh orange segments, fresh grated coconut, and sometimes pineapple with a light dressing of sugar and orange juice. The preparation was labor-intensive. Fresh coconuts needed cracking and grating, oranges needed careful segmenting, but the result was refreshing and elegant. Fresh coconuts cost about 50 cents each, and combined with oranges and pineapple, the dish cost about $2 for 12 servings. The natural sweetness from fruit meant little added sugar was needed, making it lighter than many holiday desserts. The dish appeared at Christmas and New Year's dinners, often served as a palate cleanser between heavy courses. Some families added maraschino cherries for color or pecans for crunch. The fresh coconut flavor was completely different from packaged shredded coconut, creating a taste that seemed exotic and special. Children loved the sweet fruit, and adults appreciated the refreshing quality that balanced rich holiday meals. Acorn squash was halved, seeded, and baked with butter and brown sugar filling the cavity, creating a sweet, tender side dish that appeared at Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners. The preparation was simple. Squash halves were placed cut side up in a baking dish, filled with butter and sugar, and baked until tender. Acorn squash cost about 20 cents per pound, making this one of the most economical holiday vegetables. The natural sweetness of the squash was enhanced by the butter and sugar, creating a dish that felt indulgent despite simple ingredients. Each person received a half squash, making serving easy and presentation attractive. The dish could be prepared while the turkey rested, using oven space efficiently. Some families added maple syrup or cinnamon for additional flavor complexity. Children enjoyed the mild sweetness, and adults appreciated the nutritious vegetable that felt like a treat rather than a duty. This elegant appetizer involved grinding cooked chicken livers with butter, onions, and seasonings, then chilling the mixture and serving it on crackers for holiday gatherings. The preparation required a meat grinder or food processor and careful seasoning to balance the strong liver flavor. Chicken livers cost about 30 cents per pound, making this an economical appetizer that seemed sophisticated and special. The pâté was often molded into attractive shapes or served in decorative crocks, signaling effort and attention to detail. The rich, smooth texture and complex flavor impressed guests and demonstrated the hostess's culinary skills. Adults appreciated the elegant appetizer that signaled a formal occasion, though children typically avoided it entirely. The pâté could be prepared days in advance, making it practical for busy holiday schedules. Some families added brandy or cognac for additional depth, while others kept it simple with just butter, onions, and herbs. This British-inspired dish accompanied roast beef at Christmas and New Year's dinners, made from a simple batter of eggs, flour, and milk, baked in beef drippings until puffed and golden. The preparation required precise timing. The batter needed very hot fat to puff properly, but the result was dramatic and delicious. The ingredients cost less than 50 cents, making this an economical way to add elegance to holiday beef dinners. The pudding emerged from the oven tall and crispy, creating visual drama that impressed guests. It needed to be served immediately while still puffed and hot, adding an element of theater to the meal. The pudding absorbed gravy beautifully, making it practical as well as impressive. Children loved the crispy edges and soft centers, and adults appreciated the traditional British element that made holiday dinners feel more sophisticated. Some families served it as a first course, while others presented it alongside the roast beef. Your grandmother's holiday table required planning, not panic. She created 15 spectacular dishes for what you spend on appetizers. These recipes vanished because we valued speed over celebration, but memory remains. 15 more dishes prove holidays were better when we cooked them ourselves. Keep reading. The best recipes are coming. This traditional Christmas dessert combined dried fruits, sweet spices, and sometimes brandy in a rich, dark filling that was baked in a flaky pie crust. The preparation could be done weeks in advance. The mincemeat actually improved with age as flavors melded and developed. Jars of prepared mincemeat cost about 60 cents, making this an affordable holiday dessert that tasted expensive and sophisticated. The spices, cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves, allspice, created complex flavors that signaled celebration and tradition. Some families made their own mincemeat from scratch, using recipes passed down through generations. The pie appeared at Christmas dinners and was often served with hard sauce or whipped cream. Children typically disliked the intense flavors and dark appearance, but adults who had grown up with mincemeat pie considered it essential for proper Christmas celebrations. The tradition connected families to British heritage and created continuity across generations. This simple appetizer involved filling celery stalks with cream cheese that had been mixed with herbs, nuts, or olives, then cutting them into bite-sized pieces for holiday gatherings. The preparation was straightforward enough for children to help, making it a family activity during holiday preparations. Celery cost about 20 cents per bunch, and cream cheese was about 30 cents, making this an economical appetizer that looked elegant on serving platters. The cream cheese could be flavored countless ways, with chopped pecans, diced pimentos, fresh herbs, or blue cheese for adults who enjoyed stronger flavors. The appetizer appeared at Christmas parties, New Year's gatherings, and holiday open houses throughout the season. The crisp celery provided textural contrast to the smooth, rich cream cheese. Children enjoyed helping prepare these and eating them, making it a reliable option for families with young helpers. The appetizers could be prepared hours in advance and refrigerated, making them practical for busy hostesses managing multiple dishes. This rich gravy was made from turkey giblets, the heart, liver, and gizzard, that were simmered with vegetables to create a flavorful stock, then thickened with flour and seasoned carefully. The preparation required time and attention, but the result was far superior to simple pan gravy. The giblets came with the turkey, making this essentially free except for the vegetables and flour needed. The gravy had depth and complexity that elevated the entire meal, making simple mashed potatoes and turkey taste special. Some families chopped the cooked giblets finely and added them back to the gravy, while others strained them out for a smooth texture. The process of making giblet gravy was often taught from mother to daughter, passing down techniques and family preferences. Adults appreciated the rich flavor, though children sometimes resisted when they learned what giblets were. The gravy could be made ahead and reheated, making it practical for managing holiday cooking schedules. A divided serving dish held various pickled vegetables: sweet pickles, dill pickles, pickled beets, pickled onions, olives, and celery sticks, creating a colorful appetizer that appeared at holiday tables before the main meal. The preparation involved opening jars and arranging items attractively, making it one of the simplest holiday traditions. The cost was minimal, about $2 for enough pickled items to fill a large relish tray serving 12 people. The variety provided something for everyone, and the tangy, vinegary flavors stimulated appetites before heavy holiday meals. Children enjoyed choosing their favorite items, and adults appreciated the traditional element that connected current celebrations to past generations. Some families included homemade pickles that had been canned during summer months, adding personal touches and pride in homemade items. The relish tray appeared so regularly at holiday meals that its absence would have seemed strange and incomplete. This humble root vegetable was peeled, cubed, boiled until tender, then mashed with butter, and sometimes a touch of sugar or nutmeg. Rutabagas appeared at Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners, particularly in families with Scandinavian or Scottish heritage. The vegetable cost about 15 cents per pound, making it one of the most economical holiday sides. The slightly sweet, earthy flavor was distinctive and divided families. Some loved it, while others merely tolerated it out of tradition. The preparation was straightforward, but required time. Rutabagas were dense and needed extended boiling to become tender. The mashed rutabaga had a golden color that looked attractive on holiday plates. Some families combined rutabagas with potatoes for a milder flavor that appealed to children. The dish represented frugality and tradition, connecting families to agricultural roots and simpler times when vegetables came from root cellars rather than supermarkets. Rehook. 20 recipes rescued from extinction. The final 10 are the forgotten masterpieces, the recipe that ended meals with standing ovations, the drinks that made adults feel fancy and kids feel grown up, the finishing touches that transformed dinner into an event. But it's the dish your grandmother's guests talked about until the next holiday. Cranberry-orange relish, fresh cranberries, and whole oranges were ground together with sugar to create a bright, tangy relish that appeared at Thanksgiving tables as an alternative to canned cranberry sauce. The preparation required a meat grinder or food processor and advanced preparation. The relish needed time to chill and for flavors to meld. Fresh cranberries cost about 30 cents per bag, and combined with oranges and sugar, the relish cost about 75 cents for 12 servings. The fresh, bright flavor was completely different from canned sauce, creating a sense of homemade care and effort. The orange added complexity and reduced the cranberry's tartness, making it more appealing to varied palates. The relish was chunky and colorful, looking beautiful in cut glass serving dishes. Some families added walnuts or pineapple for additional texture and flavor. Children often preferred the familiar canned sauce, but adults appreciated the fresh, vibrant alternative that showed culinary ambition. This elegant entree appeared at Christmas and New Year's dinners in families who wanted something more sophisticated than turkey. Duck required careful preparation. The fatty skin needed pricking to allow fat to render during roasting. A whole duck cost about $4 and served 4 people, making it more expensive per serving than turkey, but special enough for important celebrations. The orange sauce was made from orange juice, sugar, and sometimes Grand Marnier or Cointreau, creating sweet tart flavors that complemented the rich duck meat. The preparation required attention to timing and temperature, but Betty Crocker's instructions made it accessible to ambitious home cooks. The dark meat had intense flavor that some loved and others found overwhelming. Carving duck required different techniques than turkey, often becoming a learning experience for fathers accustomed to poultry with different anatomy. The rendered duck fat was saved for cooking, adding value beyond the single meal. This luxurious casserole layered fresh oysters with cracker crumbs, butter, and cream, then baked until golden and bubbly. The dish appeared at Christmas dinners, particularly in coastal regions where fresh oysters were readily available. Fresh oysters cost about $2 per pint, making this one of the more expensive holiday sides, but the rich, briny flavor justified the expense for special occasions. The preparation was simple: layers of cracker crumbs and oysters with cream poured over, then baked until heated through. The result was creamy, rich, and distinctly oceanic in flavor. Children typically avoided this dish entirely, but adults who enjoyed seafood considered it essential for proper holiday celebrations. Some families added a splash of sherry or white wine for additional complexity. The dish needed to be served hot immediately after baking, adding an element of timing challenge to holiday meal coordination. This vibrant condiment combined cooked beets with prepared horseradish and vinegar, creating a sharp, tangy accompaniment for holiday roast beef or ham. The preparation was straightforward. Beets were cooked, peeled, and grated, then mixed with horseradish and seasonings. Fresh beets cost about 20 cents per pound, and combined with horseradish and vinegar, the relish cost less than $1 for 12 servings. The bright magenta color looked beautiful in small serving dishes on holiday tables. The sharp horseradish cut through rich meats and heavy gravies, providing palate-cleansing contrast. Adults who enjoyed strong flavors appreciated this relish, though children typically avoided it completely. Some families made large batches and canned them for use throughout the winter months. The relish represented traditional Eastern European cooking that many immigrant families maintained as connections to their heritage. This elegant side dish combined roasted Brussels sprouts with roasted chestnuts and butter, creating a sophisticated vegetable course for Christmas dinners. The preparation was time-consuming. Both Brussels sprouts and chestnuts needed careful cooking, but the result was delicious and impressive. Brussels sprouts cost about 30 cents per pound, and chestnuts added another $1, making this a moderately expensive side dish. The combination of slightly bitter sprouts with sweet, nutty chestnuts created complex flavors that appealed to adult palates. The dish represented European sophistication and culinary ambition, signaling that the hostess had invested significant effort in the holiday meal. Children almost universally rejected Brussels sprouts, making this a dish prepared primarily for adult guests. Some families added bacon or pancetta for smoky richness that made the vegetables more appealing to reluctant eaters. Rehook. 25 recipes down, 5 legendary dishes remain. These final recipes are the lost treasures, the showstoppers your grandmother saved for special guests, the dishes that required her secret techniques, the recipes she promised to write down but never did. Recipe 29 was her signature, her masterpiece, the one dish that made everyone ask, how does she do it? Now you'll know. This is the recipe that defined her holiday table. This dense, dark, steamed pudding, filled with dried fruits, nuts, and spices, appeared at Christmas dinners, representing British holiday traditions. The preparation was complex and time-consuming. The pudding steamed for hours and traditionally was made weeks in advance to allow flavors to develop. The ingredients cost about $3: dried fruits, suet, flour, spices, and sometimes brandy, making this one of the more expensive holiday desserts. The pudding was dramatically presented, often flamed with brandy at the table, creating a theatrical moment that delighted children and impressed guests. The hard sauce, butter, powdered sugar, and brandy beaten until fluffy, melted over the hot pudding, creating rich, boozy flavors. Adults who had grown up with plum pudding considered it essential for proper Christmas celebrations, while those unfamiliar with it often found it too dense and intense. This elegant dish featured veal or lamb sweetbreads, the thymus gland, combined with mushrooms, cream sauce, and breadcrumbs, then baked until golden. Sweetbreads appeared at sophisticated holiday dinners, representing culinary ambition and European refinement. Fresh sweetbreads cost about $1 per pound, making them economical despite their luxurious reputation. The preparation required careful handling. Sweetbreads needed soaking, parboiling, and trimming before cooking. The result was tender, delicate, and subtly flavored, quite different from ordinary meats. The dish appeared at Christmas and New Year's dinners in families who valued fine dining and traditional European cooking. Children typically refused to try sweetbreads once they learned what they were, but adults who enjoyed organ meats considered them a delicacy. The cream sauce and mushrooms added richness and complexity that made the dish feel special enough for important celebrations. This elegant first course involved combining diced cooked chicken with celery, mayonnaise, and gelatin, then molding it into decorative shapes for holiday luncheons. The preparation required advanced planning. The salad needed hours to set properly in the refrigerator. Leftover chicken from previous meals made this economical, with total cost under $1 for 8 servings. The molded presentation looked impressive and demonstrated the hostess's patience and attention to detail. The salad was typically unmolded onto lettuce-lined plates and garnished with tomato wedges or hard-boiled eggs. The combination of savory chicken and jiggly gelatin divided opinions. Some found it elegant and refreshing, while others disliked the texture. The dish appeared at Christmas luncheons, New Year's Day meals, and Easter dinners, particularly popular among women's social groups and church gatherings. This regional specialty combined ripe persimmons with flour, sugar, eggs, and spices to create a dense, sweet pudding that appeared at Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners in areas where persimmons grew wild. The preparation required perfectly ripe persimmons. Unripe fruit was astringent and inedible. Fresh persimmons were often free for families who gathered them from trees, making this an economical holiday dessert. The pudding had a unique flavor, sweet, slightly spicy, and distinctly different from other holiday desserts. Persimmon pudding was a dessert that divided America along geographic lines. In the Midwest, particularly in Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, and parts of Kentucky, persimmon pudding was as essential to Thanksgiving as pumpkin pie was elsewhere. Families who had grown up eating it considered the holiday incomplete without it. But travel a few hundred miles in any direction, and you'd find people who had never heard of persimmons, let alone persimmon pudding. This regional specificity made the dessert a marker of local identity, a food tradition that connected families to specific places and landscapes. The American persimmon tree grew wild throughout much of the eastern and central United States, thriving in areas with moderate climates and appearing in forests, along roadsides, and in abandoned fields. The trees were common enough that most rural and suburban families in persimmon territory had access to them either on their own property or within walking distance. The fruit ripened in late fall, typically October and November, making it perfectly timed for Thanksgiving preparations. This natural seasonal alignment meant that persimmon pudding became associated with autumn and holidays almost automatically. Gathering persimmons was a family activity that marked the transition from fall to winter. Children would accompany parents or grandparents to known persimmon trees, carrying bags or buckets to collect the fallen fruit. The best persimmons were those that had fallen naturally from the tree, indicating perfect ripeness. Fruit still hanging on the tree was usually not ready, and picking it early meant dealing with the intense astringency that made unripe persimmons completely inedible. The astringency of unripe persimmons was legendary and unforgettable. Bite into an unripe persimmon, and your mouth would pucker so intensely that you couldn't speak, couldn't swallow, couldn't do anything but wait for the sensation to pass. The tannins in unripe fruit created a dry, cotton-mouth feeling that was deeply unpleasant and lasted for what felt like hours. Children learned quickly to wait for the fruit to ripen completely, and the memory of accidentally eating unripe persimmon was usually enough to ensure they never made that mistake twice. Ripe persimmons, by contrast, were incredibly sweet and soft, almost custard-like in texture. The fruit would be so soft that it barely held its shape, and the skin would be wrinkled and dark orange to brown. The flesh inside was pulpy and sweet, with a flavor that was hard to describe to someone who'd never tasted it, something like a cross between a mango, a date, and a pumpkin, but not quite like any of those things. The flavor was distinctly autumnal, warm and rich, with notes of honey and spice even before any spices were added. Processing the persimmons for pudding required separating the pulp from the skins and seeds. This was done by pushing the soft fruit through a colander or food mill, a process that took time and patience but was necessary to achieve the smooth texture required for pudding. The resulting pulp was thick and orange, with a consistency somewhere between applesauce and pumpkin puree. A quart of persimmon pulp required processing a significant quantity of fruit, but since the fruit was free and the labor was family labor, the cost was essentially zero. Fresh persimmons were often free for families who gathered them from trees, making this an economical holiday dessert. In an era when holiday budgets were tight and every expense had to be justified, a dessert that cost nothing for the main ingredient was particularly valuable. The only expenses were flour, sugar, eggs, milk, and spices, all pantry staples that families already had on hand. A persimmon pudding that could serve 8 to 10 people might cost 50 cents in ingredients beyond the free persimmons, making it one of the most economical desserts possible. The pudding had a unique flavor, sweet, slightly spicy, and distinctly different from other holiday desserts. The base flavor of the persimmons was enhanced with cinnamon, nutmeg, and sometimes ginger or cloves, creating a spice profile similar to pumpkin pie, but with the distinctive persimmon flavor underneath. Some recipes included vanilla extract, which complemented the fruit's natural sweetness. The sugar content was substantial. Most recipes called for at least a cup of sugar per quart of pulp, but the sweetness was balanced by the spices and the slight tannic quality that remained even in ripe persimmons. The texture was dense and moist, similar to pumpkin pie filling but more substantial. Unlike pumpkin pie, which was baked in a crust and served in slices, persimmon pudding was typically baked in a rectangular pan and served in squares, more like brownies than pie. The texture was somewhere between a custard and a cake, denser than custard, moister than cake, with a slightly sticky quality that came from the fruit pulp. When properly made, the pudding would be firm enough to cut into neat squares, but moist enough that it didn't crumble, with a surface that was slightly darker and firmer than the interior. The baking process required attention to timing and temperature. Persimmon pudding was typically baked at a moderate temperature, around 325 to 350 degrees, for an hour or more, depending on the depth of the pan. The pudding was done when a knife inserted in the center came out clean, but unlike cake, it didn't rise or develop a springy texture. Instead, it set into a dense, uniform consistency throughout. The top would darken slightly during baking, developing a thin, slightly chewy surface that contrasted nicely with the softer interior. The pudding was often served with whipped cream or hard sauce. Whipped cream provided a cool, light contrast to the dense, sweet pudding, and its mild flavor allowed the persimmon taste to shine through. Hard sauce, a mixture of butter, powdered sugar, and brandy or rum beaten together until fluffy, was the more traditional accompaniment, particularly for Christmas dinners. The hard sauce would begin to melt when placed on the warm pudding, creating a rich, buttery sauce that soaked into the top layer. The alcohol in the hard sauce added complexity and a slight warmth that complemented the spices in the pudding. Some families served persimmon pudding with vanilla ice cream, creating a temperature contrast that was particularly appealing. The cold ice cream would melt slightly when it touched the warm pudding, creating a sauce that combined the vanilla flavor of the ice cream with the persimmon flavor of the pudding. This combination was especially popular with children, who might find the pudding too dense or too intensely flavored on its own, but loved it when paired with ice cream. Some families would have persimmon pulp shipped from relatives back home, frozen and packed in dry ice, just so they could make their traditional pudding. Others would experiment with Asian persimmons, a different species that was more widely available, but would report that the flavor wasn't quite right, that it didn't taste like home. The tradition represented regional food culture and connections to local agriculture. Persimmon pudding wasn't something you could buy at a store or order from a catalog. It required access to wild persimmon trees, knowledge of when and how to harvest the fruit, and familiarity with the traditional preparation methods. This meant the tradition was passed down through families and communities, with recipes and techniques shared among neighbors and across generations. The knowledge of where the best persimmon trees grew was local information, part of the community's collective understanding of the landscape. The pudding also represented a connection to indigenous food traditions. Native American tribes throughout the persimmon's range had used the fruit for centuries, eating it fresh, drying it for winter storage, and incorporating it into various dishes. The persimmon pudding of the 1960s was a descendant of these earlier traditions, adapted and modified by European settlers, but retaining the fundamental relationship with the wild fruit. Making persimmon pudding was a way of connecting with the land and with the long history of people who had gathered persimmons from these same trees. In some communities, persimmon festivals celebrated the fruit and its culinary traditions. These festivals, held in October or November, featured persimmon pudding contests where local cooks would compete to make the best version. The contests revealed the variations within the tradition. Some cooks added buttermilk for tanginess, others included chopped nuts for texture. Some used dark brown sugar instead of white sugar for a deeper flavor. Despite these variations, all the puddings shared the fundamental characteristics of dense texture, sweet persimmon flavor, and warm spices. The festivals also included other persimmon preparations: persimmon bread, persimmon cookies, persimmon ice cream, but the pudding remained the centerpiece. the traditional preparation that everyone recognized and most people preferred. Winning the persimmon pudding contest was a genuine honor, a recognition of cooking skill and adherence to tradition. Recipes that had been in families for generations would be closely guarded, with secret ingredients or techniques that supposedly made all the difference. Children growing up in persimmon territory learned to identify persimmon trees, to judge when the fruit was ripe, and to appreciate the unique flavor of persimmon pudding. These skills and tastes were part of regional identity, markers of belonging to a particular place and community. A child who moved away might forget many things about their hometown, but they'd remember the taste of persimmon pudding and the experience of gathering persimmons on cold autumn days. The decline of persimmon pudding as a common holiday dessert reflects broader changes in American food culture. As people became more mobile, moving frequently for work and education, regional food traditions became harder to maintain. The knowledge of where persimmon trees grew and when to harvest them was lost when families moved to areas without persimmons. Store-bought desserts became more convenient and more socially acceptable, reducing the pressure to maintain time-consuming traditional preparations. Additionally, tastes changed. The dense, sweet, heavily spiced desserts of the 1960s fell out of favor as lighter, less sweet desserts became trendy. Persimmon pudding's texture, which had once been considered pleasantly substantial, began to seem heavy and old-fashioned. Younger generations, accustomed to lighter cakes and more delicate flavors, often found persimmon pudding too intense, too dense, too much. Yet the tradition persists in pockets, maintained by families who value the connection to place and history that persimmon pudding represents. Small-scale persimmon pudding production has even become a niche business in some areas, with local producers selling frozen pudding to expatriates who crave the taste of home. These commercial versions never quite match the homemade pudding, but they serve a need, providing a taste of tradition to those who can no longer make it themselves. Baby carrots or carrot coins were cooked until tender, then glazed with butter, brown sugar, and sometimes a touch of ginger or nutmeg. This simple side dish appeared at Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners, providing color and mild sweetness that appealed to children. Carrots cost about 15 cents per pound, making this one of the most economical holiday vegetables. The preparation was straightforward but required attention. The glaze needed to reduce and coat the carrots without burning. The result was shiny, sweet, and attractive on holiday plates. The beauty of glazed carrots lay in their simplicity and their ability to transform an everyday vegetable into something that felt special enough for a holiday table. In an era when holiday meals required stretching budgets to accommodate multiple dishes and numerous guests, glazed carrots represented the perfect balance of economy and elegance. They looked beautiful, tasted like a treat, cost almost nothing, and could be prepared by even novice cooks without fear of failure. The carrots themselves were purchased in their most basic form, whole carrots with the greens still attached, sold in bunches at the grocery store. Your grandmother would bring them home, cut off the greens, and scrub them clean under cold running water. The choice then was whether to slice them into coins, rounds about a quarter-inch thick, or to cut them into sticks. Some families preferred the coins because they cooked more evenly and presented nicely on the plate. Others liked the sticks because they felt more elegant, more like something you'd see at a fancy restaurant. Baby carrots, in the modern sense of those pre-peeled, pre-cut little carrots sold in bags, didn't exist in the 1960s. What people called baby carrots, then, were actually young carrots, harvested early when they were still small and tender. These were a luxury item, more expensive than regular carrots, and most working-class families stuck with the standard full-sized carrots that cost 15 cents per pound. A pound of carrots would serve 6 to 8 people as a side dish, making this one of the most economical vegetables available during the holiday season. The preparation process began with cooking the carrots until they were tender but not mushy. This was typically done by boiling them in salted water for about 10 to 15 minutes, depending on how thick they'd been cut. The key was to cook them until a fork could pierce them easily, but they still held their shape and had a slight firmness to them. Overcooked carrots would turn to mush when you tried to glaze them, and undercooked carrots would be unpleasantly crunchy and wouldn't absorb the glaze properly. While the carrots were cooking, your grandmother would prepare the glaze. The basic formula was simple: butter, brown sugar, and a small amount of liquid, usually the water the carrots had been cooked in, though some recipes called for orange juice or pineapple juice for additional flavor. The proportions varied by family and preference, but a typical ratio was about 2 tablespoons of butter and 2 to 3 tablespoons of brown sugar for every pound of carrots. Some cooks added a pinch of salt to balance the sweetness, and many included warming spices like ginger, nutmeg, or cinnamon. The glaze was made in a large skillet, the same skillet that would be used to finish the carrots. The butter would be melted over medium heat, then the brown sugar would be added and stirred until it dissolved into the butter, creating a thick, fragrant syrup. If spices were being used, they'd be added at this point, stirred into the butter-sugar mixture until they were evenly distributed and their aroma filled the kitchen. The smell of butter and brown sugar cooking together was intoxicating, sweet and rich and promising, a scent that announced holiday cooking was underway. Once the glaze was prepared and bubbling gently, the cooked carrots would be drained and added to the skillet. This was the moment that required attention and skill. The carrots needed to be stirred gently but constantly, coating them evenly with the glaze while allowing the liquid to reduce and thicken. The heat had to be carefully controlled. Too high and the sugar would burn, turning bitter and dark. Too low and the glaze wouldn't reduce properly, leaving the carrots swimming in thin syrup rather than coated in thick glaze. The process took about 5 to 10 minutes of constant attention. The dish could be prepared in advance and reheated, making it practical for busy holiday cooking when timing multiple dishes was a logistical challenge. Your grandmother could make the glazed carrots in the morning or even the day before, store them in the refrigerator, and then reheat them gently in a skillet or in the oven before serving. The glaze might need a small amount of additional butter or liquid when reheating to restore its glossy consistency, but otherwise the dish held up well and actually improved slightly as the carrots had more time to absorb the flavors of the glaze. Some families added orange juice or pineapple juice to the glaze for additional flavor complexity. The orange juice version was particularly popular because it added a bright, citrusy note that complemented the sweetness of the brown sugar while adding a subtle tartness that prevented the dish from being cloying. The orange flavor paired beautifully with holiday meats like ham or turkey, and the vitamin C content gave mothers a reason to feel like they were providing nutrition along with the treat. The pineapple juice variation was less common but created an interesting tropical twist on the traditional recipe. The pineapple flavor was more subtle than orange, adding a gentle fruity sweetness that enhanced rather than competed with the brown sugar. Some cooks would add actual pineapple chunks to the dish, creating a sweet and savory combination that was popular in the 1960s when fruit and vegetable combinations were trendy. Pineapple glazed carrots felt exotic and special, like something you might be served at a luau or a fancy restaurant, even though they cost just pennies more than the basic version. Other flavor variations included adding a splash of bourbon or rum to the glaze, creating an adult version of the dish with depth and complexity. The alcohol would cook off, leaving behind only the flavor notes, vanilla, caramel, oak, that complemented the brown sugar beautifully. Some cooks added a teaspoon of Dijon mustard to the glaze, creating a sweet and tangy combination that was sophisticated and interesting. Others stirred in a handful of raisins or chopped pecans at the end, adding texture and additional sweetness. Children universally accepted glazed carrots, making them a reliable vegetable option when other holiday sides were rejected. This was no small consideration in an era when children were expected to eat what was served, and clean plate clubs were common. Getting kids to eat vegetables was a constant challenge, and glazed carrots were one of the few vegetable dishes that children would actually request. The sweetness made them palatable to young taste buds that rejected bitter or strongly flavored vegetables, and the soft texture was easy to chew and swallow. Parents appreciated that glazed carrots provided actual nutrition, vitamin A, fiber, and other beneficial compounds, in a form that children would willingly consume. In an era before vitamin supplements were common, and when nutritional knowledge was spreading through women's magazines and home economics classes, mothers were increasingly aware of the importance of vegetables in children's diets. Glazed carrots allowed them to meet nutritional goals without the dinner table battles that often accompanied attempts to make children eat their vegetables. The sweetness made vegetables feel like a treat rather than a nutritional obligation. This was psychologically important for children who associated vegetables with punishment or duty. Glazed carrots were vegetables that felt like dessert, that children actually looked forward to, that could be used as a reward rather than a requirement. "Finish your turkey, and you can have more glazed carrots," was a phrase that actually worked, unlike similar attempts with Brussels sprouts or green beans. The dish also served as a gateway vegetable, introducing children to carrots in a palatable form that might eventually lead to acceptance of carrots in other preparations. A child who loved glazed carrots might be willing to try raw carrot sticks, or carrots in soup, or roasted carrots, bridging generational preferences in a way that few other dishes could. Grandparents, parents, and children could all enjoy glazed carrots, making them one of the few dishes that had truly universal appeal. The visual appeal of glazed carrots shouldn't be underestimated. Holiday tables in the 1960s were expected to be abundant and beautiful, showcasing the cook's skills and the family's prosperity. Glazed carrots contributed to this visual feast. This visual appeal was important in an era when presentation mattered, when holiday meals were photographed for family albums, when the appearance of the table was a reflection of the hostess's abilities and attention to detail. Glazed carrots looked like effort had been invested, like care had been taken, even though they were actually one of the simplest dishes on the table. The economy of glazed carrots made them particularly valuable for working-class families hosting holiday meals. For less than $1, you could prepare a vegetable side dish that would serve 8 to 10 people, look beautiful, taste delicious, and be universally accepted by guests of all ages. This kind of value was essential when you were trying to create a holiday feast on a limited budget, when every dish had to justify its cost, when waste was unacceptable and economy was necessary. The dish also scaled easily, making it practical for both small family dinners and large holiday gatherings. The recipe could be doubled, tripled, or quadrupled without any increase in difficulty or change in technique. Whether you were cooking for 6 people or 20, glazed carrots worked, and they worked the same way. This scalability was important for families who might host different-sized gatherings from year to year, or who might need to accommodate unexpected guests. Glazed carrots represented a particular approach to holiday cooking that was common in the 1960s, taking simple, inexpensive ingredients and elevating them through technique and presentation into something that felt special and celebratory. This was the art of making do, of creating abundance from limited resources, of turning everyday foods into holiday fare through the addition of butter, sugar, and care. It was cooking that honored both economy and celebration, that refused to let limited budgets diminish the joy and beauty of holiday meals. The dish has largely disappeared from modern holiday tables, replaced by more elaborate vegetable preparations or by simpler, less sweet versions. Contemporary tastes tend toward savory rather than sweet vegetables, and the amount of butter and sugar in traditional glazed carrots feels excessive by current nutritional standards. Roasted vegetables, vegetable gratins, and fresh vegetable medleys have taken the place that glazed carrots once held, and few families still make them the old-fashioned way. But for those who remember them, glazed carrots represent more than just a side dish. They represent holiday tables from childhood, the smell of butter and brown sugar mingling with roasted turkey, the shine of candlelight reflected in glazed vegetables arranged on grandmother's good china, the satisfaction of eating something that was both sweet treat and somehow still counted as eating your vegetables. They represent an era when holiday cooking was about making the most of what you had, when economy and celebration weren't contradictory but complementary, when a 15-cent vegetable could be transformed into something beautiful enough for the most special meals of the year. They represent the alchemy of home cooking, where simple ingredients became special through attention and care. They represent mothers and grandmothers, standing at stoves, wooden spoons in hand, patiently stirring until the glaze reached perfect consistency. They represent children who actually asked for seconds of a vegetable, who looked forward to that particular dish, who carried the memory of those sweet, shiny carrots into adulthood. They represent a time when homemade was standard rather than exceptional, when holiday tables were built from scratch rather than assembled from store-bought components, when the labor of cooking was how love was expressed and tradition was maintained across generations. Hours spent at the stove weren't burdensome. They were purposeful, meaningful, a way of caring for family that required no words. Each stirred pot, each carefully timed dish, each recipe passed from mother to daughter, carried love in its execution of dishes carried from mother to their daughter, step by step.